The silence in my house had become deafening after the divorce. Every creak of the wooden beams and tick of the clock echoed through the vast emptiness. At 35, I found myself alone, running my fingers absently over cold sheets in a bed that felt too big for me alone. My chestnut hair fell in waves over my shoulders as I gazed at my reflection each morning, noting the subtle changes time had etched into my features. A few silver strands here, faint lines there. Despite maintaining my figure through religious yoga sessions and morning runs, I could feel the hollowness creeping in. My body was still curvaceous in all the right places, my 5 feet 7 inches frame toned from exercise. But something vital was missing. The house, a modest 3-bedroom I'd kept in the divorce settlement, felt like a museum of memories I couldn't bring myself to pack away. Then I saw the flyer for the local animal shelter. "Give a forever home, find forever love," it proclaimed in a cheerful font that seemed to mock my loneliness. Something drew me there that Saturday morning in October, the autumn air crisp as fallen leaves crunched under my boots. The shelter smelled of disinfectant and wet dog, a cacophony of barks echoing off the concrete walls. That's when I saw him, a gorgeous German shepherd with intelligent amber eyes that seemed to pierce right through my carefully constructed walls. His coat was black and tan, slightly matted, but still gleaming under the fluorescent lights. He sat with a quiet dignity that stood out from the chaos. "This is Max," shelter worker Jenny told me, 3 years old. "He was given up by a breeder who fell on hard times. He's incredibly clever, but he needs someone special." As if he understood what was being said, Max's ears perked up and his gaze never left mine. When I approached his kennel, he didn't bark or jump like the others. He just stood there, tail wagging gently, with his nose pressed against the chain-link fence. Something clicked in that moment, a missing piece of the jigsaw I didn't know I was looking for. The adoption paperwork felt momentous, like signing up for a new life. Jenny helped me gather supplies: a plush bed, quality food, toys, and a sturdy collar. "He's been waiting for someone like you," she said, with a knowing smile. "Some dogs know their people when they see them." In the soft glow of Max's first morning with me, I could hear his rhythmic breathing beside my bed, which became my favorite alarm clock. Our bond deepened with each passing season. Spring flowers gave way to summer storms, then autumn leaves. My initial loneliness turned into a comfortable contentment with his company. Those sacred morning walks became longer, more intimate. I discovered a hidden path leading to a secluded pond where Max could swim freely while I confided my deepest secrets. His powerful body slicing through the water, muscles rippling under his shiny coat. I found myself admiring his strength, his unwavering devotion. "You're my guardian angel," I'd whisper as he shook the water from his fur, his intelligent amber eyes fixed on mine. He pressed his warm body against my legs, his tail wagging slowly as if to say, "I'll never leave you." The attempts at mating became less frequent. Every man felt Max's intense protectiveness. Tom from yoga class barely made it through dinner before Max's low growl chased him away. Michael, a charming lawyer, lasted 3 dates until that fateful night. We were lying on my bed, his hands wandering up my blouse, when Max's barking erupted like thunder. The scratching at my bedroom door became frantic, his deep growls mixed with desperate whimpers. Michael froze. "He sounds serious," Michael stammered, already reaching for his discarded shirt. "He's just being protective," I tried to explain, but Max's barking reached a fever pitch. The door rattled in its frame from his determination to reach me. "Look, I should probably go. Call me." Michael hurried down the stairs, Max's warning following him out. Once alone, I opened the door to find Max trembling with protective energy. He rushed to cover my face with worried licks, whimpering as he examined me, his body pressed close, claiming me. Those amber eyes were fierce with possessive love. "It's all right, boy, I'm safe," I soothed, burying my face in his thick fur. "You're the only one I need." There was a change that night. Max's bed moved from the floor to right next to mine. His warm presence kept the loneliness at bay better than any man could. I began to refuse dates altogether, preferring our private walks and intimate evenings alone. Our morning walk became more isolated as Max led me deeper into the forest, his muscular form leading the way, pausing to make sure I was following. Those amber eyes seemed to hold secrets, drawing me further away from the world and deeper into our private paradise. Our solitary morning walk became an obsession. Each dawn found us wandering deeper into the forest, Max's powerful body leading the way while I followed trustingly. His black and tan coat glistened with dew as he marked our private territory. That fateful morning began like any other. The mist hung low between the trees as we explored a new trail. Suddenly, Max's ears pricked forward, a low rumble rising in his chest. Before I could react, a large Rottweiler burst from the bushes, unleashed and aggressive. Time slowed as the dogs clashed in a frenzy of snarling and snapping teeth. Max's muscles clenched and flexed as he positioned himself between me and the attacker. The sound of their struggle echoed through the trees, primal, violent, terrifying. I called for help, but we were too far from the main trail. The Rottweiler's teeth found Max's shoulder, drawing blood that matted his beautiful coat. But my brave protector fought back fiercely, his powerful jaws and trained instincts prevailing until the other dog finally retreated with a yelp. "Oh God, Max!" I cried, dropping to my knees beside him. He was panting heavily, blood trickling from the puncture wounds, but his first concern was still me. Those amber eyes searched my face as his tongue gently licked away my tears. We hurried home, where I tenderly cleaned his wounds in the shower, my hands shaking as I parted his wet fur. Max stood patiently, pressing himself against my body whenever I started to cry again. His warm strength remained undiminished despite the injury. That night, I couldn't bear to let him sleep separately. "Come here, boy," I whispered, patting the bed beside me. He jumped up gracefully, his large frame resting against mine as I stroked his fur. The steady thump of his tail against the mattress soothed my lingering fears. "You saved me," I murmured into his neck, breathing in his musky scent. "My brave, beautiful boy." His response was a soft whimper as he nuzzled closer, one paw draped possessively across my waist. The intimacy of the moment made me shiver. I'll never forget the night everything changed between Max and me. His wounds from protecting me were healing, but seeing those little scars under his thick fur made my heart ache. Every soft whimper as I tended to his wounds tore at my soul. My brave, beautiful boy had risked everything for me. I couldn't sleep that night. The moonlight filtered through my curtains, casting shadows across Max's powerful form beside my bed. His amber eyes studied me with that piercing gaze that made me feel completely seen. My fingers trembled as I traced the healing scars on his shoulder. "You've given me everything," I whispered into the darkness. "Let me show you how much I love you." My heart pounding, I crept downstairs to the kitchen. The smooth glass jar of peanut butter felt cool in my trembling hands. Back in our darkened sanctuary, Max's tail thumped gently against the sheets as I settled down beside him, his warmth radiating against my skin. That first taste from my fingers made him whimper softly. Such gentle sounds from my fierce protector sent shivers down my spine. As my confidence grew, I spread out more where I craved his attention. His warm tongue was so tender, drawing soft gasps from my lips as pleasure built in waves. When release finally came, it was transcendent, stars bursting behind my closed eyes. Afterwards, Max curled up protectively around my trembling form, our hearts beating in perfect sync as I buried my face in his thick fur. No more loneliness, no more emptiness, just that primal connection filling every void in my soul. "My beautiful boy," I murmured, "my everything." Our bond deepened beyond ordinary understanding. Every day brought new intimacies, new discoveries. His devotion consumed me until nothing else mattered. Not the rules of society or the judgment of others, just us in our private world of touch and trust. I didn't want to date again, but Daniel was different. A rugged vet with kind eyes who actually understood animals. To my shock, Max didn't growl or bark when they met. He approached slowly, sniffing Daniel's outstretched hand as I held my breath. "He's gorgeous," Daniel said, expertly examining Max's coat. "Such loyalty in his eyes. You can tell he adores you." The words made me nervous. Could Daniel sense the depth of our connection? But Max seemed to accept him, allowing him to join our evening walks. We fell into a strange routine: movie nights with Max at our feet, weekend walks where Daniel taught us about the local wildlife. But privately, guilt gnawed at me. My intimate moments with Max became less frequent, but more intense. Stolen afternoons while Daniel worked, I would cry into Max's fur afterwards, confused by my conflicting desires. My faithful companion would comfort me with soft nuzzles, his amber eyes full of understanding. The words made me nervous. Could Daniel sense the depth of our connection? But Max seemed to accept him, allowing him to join our evening walks. We fell into a strange routine: movie nights with Max at our feet, weekend walks where Daniel taught us about the local wildlife. But privately, guilt gnawed at me. My intimate moments with Max became less frequent, but more intense. Stolen afternoons while Daniel worked. I would cry into Max's fur afterwards, confused by my conflicting desires. My faithful companion would comfort me with soft strokes, his amber eyes full of understanding. "I'll never believe you," I whisper. "No matter what happens with Daniel, you're my first love." A year ago, I would never have imagined letting another human into our private sanctuary. But Daniel was different. I met him at my friend Kate's backyard barbecue, where he was treating her elderly retriever's arthritis. I was immediately drawn to his gentle hands and quiet confidence with animals. At first, I dodged his attempts to ask me out. The guilt of my secret intimacy with Max weighed heavily, but Daniel persisted in the nicest way, leaving his card in case Max ever needed a checkup, bringing special treats when we'd run into him at the dog park. The day he first came to our house, I was a nervous wreck. Max had chased every other man away. But something extraordinary happened. Instead of his usual aggressive display, Max slowly approached Daniel, head slightly lowered, and sniffed his outstretched hand. "What a magnificent boy," Daniel murmured, his experienced fingers finding just the right spots behind Max's ears. "You can see the intelligence in his eyes. The bond between the two of you is beautiful." The words made my heart race with fear. Could he somehow sense the true nature of our bond? But Daniel just smiled warmly, completely at ease with Max's protective nature. Gradually, Daniel became a regular part of our lives. His veterinary knowledge helped me understand Max even better, explaining his body language, teaching me new training techniques. On our group walks, he'd point out medicinal plants and tell stories of wildlife encounters from his practice. "You two saved each other," he remarked one evening as Max lay contentedly between us on the couch. "It's rare to see such perfect trust between man and animal." If only he knew the full truth of those words. While Daniel brought normalcy and companionship into my life, my heart remained divided. The stolen afternoon moments with Max became more precious, more desperate. The familiar glass in the kitchen called to me less often, but with greater intensity. After our private intimacies, I'd hold Max close and breathe in his musky scent, while guilt and confusion raged inside me. His amber eyes never judged, only offered unconditional love and acceptance of my torn nature. Daniel represented everything I should want: stability, understanding, a chance at a conventional future. He even talked about us moving in together, getting Max a companion dog. The thought terrified me. How could I maintain my deepest connection while sharing a home with someone else? Tonight, as I watch Daniel sleep peacefully beside me while Max keeps his faithful watch at the window, I realize I'm at a crossroads. Can I truly bridge these two worlds, or must I choose between socially acceptable love and the primal bond that saved my soul? On our last night alone, before Daniel moved in, tears streamed down my face as I held Max. The familiar jar sat unopened on my bedside table, a symbol of what I had to leave behind. "You saved me," I whispered into his fur, breathing in his comforting scent one last time. "When I was broken and alone, you put me back together." Max sensed my emotional state and pressed his warm body against mine, as he always did when I cried. His amber eyes held such understanding, such acceptance of whatever I chose. One last time I reached for the glass with trembling hands. Our intimate connection that night was bittersweet, knowing it would be our last. His gentle attention brought me to that familiar peak of pleasure, but this time my ecstasy was mixed with soft sobs. Afterwards, as always, Max curled up protectively around me, his steady heartbeat soothing my aching soul. "I will always love you differently," I murmured, "but we must move on." In the weeks that followed, I packed some things away, hiding evidence of our special bond. The jar was buried deep in the rubbish, but Max's devotion never wavered. He accepted Daniel's growing presence with grace, as if he understood that this was for me. Sometimes, in private moments, I still catch his knowing gaze and remember what we shared. But we have found a new normal. Now my beautiful boy remains my protector and confidant, while Daniel gives me the human love I need. Some nights I still cry into Max's fur, missing our deepest intimacy. But his gentle cuddles remind me that our love transcends the physical. We will always share a soul-deep connection that no one else could understand. On our last night together, before Daniel moves in, my skin tingles with anticipation and sadness. Max's deep amber eyes watched me reach for the glass one last time, his tail tapping softly against the sheets. "Come here, my beautiful boy," I whispered. His warm breath on my skin made me shiver. That talented tongue, which had given me so much pleasure over our years together, was working its magic once more. Each tender stroke sent electricity through my body, building that familiar tension. I arched and gasped, my fingers tangling in his thick fur. The way he knew exactly how to touch me, how to drive me wild, no human could compare to his instinctive understanding of my needs. His powerful body pressed against mine as waves of pleasure washed over me again and again. Afterwards, I cried into his fur, knowing we'd never share this intimacy again. His soft whimpers and nuzzles comforted me, as always. We fell asleep intertwined, his steady heartbeat matching mine. The next morning, I buried the empty jar deep in the rubbish and said goodbye to this chapter of our lives. Though our physical connection had to end, the spiritual bond we shared would never fade. Max seemed to understand, accepting Daniel's presence with quiet dignity. Sometimes, late at night, I still catch his knowing gaze and remember the passionate moments we shared. But we found a new way forward. Our love transformed into something society could accept, while remaining uniquely ours. Daniel moved in one sunny Saturday, his boxes mingling with my carefully sanitized space. I'd spent weeks erasing evidence of my past intimacies with Max. Certain sheets disappeared, certain items buried deep in rubbish bags, taken far from home. That first night together, as a proper household, I lay awake between them, Daniel's arm draped over my waist, while Max watched from his new bed across the room. Those amber eyes held such understanding, such acceptance of our evolution. Yet my body remembered his touch, his talented tongue that had brought such pleasure. I shivered at the memory. "Are you all right?" Daniel murmured sleepily, pulling me closer. "Just settling in," I whispered back, watching Max's tail thump gently against his bed. The following weeks brought new routines. Morning walks became a trio instead of our private communion. Max adapted gracefully, though sometimes in quiet moments alone, he'd press against me with that old familiar intensity. My heart would race, my body responding to memories of our passionate past. During intimate moments with Daniel, Max would retreat to the living room, a gentlemanly courtesy that made my chest ache with gratitude and guilt. But sometimes I'd catch those knowing eyes and blush, remembering how thoroughly my beautiful boy had once claimed me. The jar of peanut butter now stayed firmly in the cupboard, used only for the occasional sandwich. But every time I opened it, my fingers trembled slightly, remembering those wild nights of abandoned pleasure. Although our physical connection was gone, the love between us remained. Max remained my constant, loyal companion, his devotion never wavering. Daniel brought stability and a chance at a conventional life, while Max remained the keeper of my deepest secrets. In this new life we built together, I found a way to honor both loves. And though I sometimes longed for the past, Max's gentle nudges reminded me that we had moved forward together,